Welcome to our channel. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for coming. This video is going to be suppressed after yesterday's video of stating that the FBI on video camera under Project Veritas admitted they wanted to assassinate President Trump, and there were no arrests made for someone working with the FBI who says the FBI wants to assassinate Trump, Kash Patel. Now we have ILMAR OMAR, an illegal alien who served in the Congress in Canada, then moved to the United States and served in the United States Congress, which was dissolved. She's calling for the open assassination of President Trump. Now the FBI, you can expect massive censorship from the FTC and the FBI for telling the truth on this. Don't tell me the FBI is against censoring. The FCC told me the FTC sent the FBI into YouTube to censor our channel. On the phone, they told me. Now, I don't record telephone conversations, and I would never state who told me that on the phone, because that would be a violation of everything that I represent, we represent. By the way, if I'm the last man standing for freedom in this country, then I stand with God. And that's a majority of one. Your narrative is breaking down, FBI yellow belly cowards at the top. You've got a lot of good people at the bottom, but the top is so corrupt, and they are so afraid. I couldn't get within 100 feet of Kash Patel because he was running. His eyes, those are demonic eyes. My God. Anyway, an ad from Atomic Minerals. The more I read about atomic minerals, the more exciting it becomes. They're looking for uranium, thorium, and monazite, which is a form of thorium that can be turned into uranium, radioactive, used in nuclear reactors. There's a $2.7 billion contract to restore domestic uranium supplies. We use it just blows my mind, 50 million pounds of uranium a year. This much uranium has as much power, energy, as a ton of coal. But we don't use breeder reactors, because then we wouldn't have to mine anything. Go figure. Anyway, so the U.S. consumes about 50 million pounds of uranium a year for nuclear reactors and for nuclear weapons. And Atomic Minerals has 6 sites, 4 in the United States, and they have 2 in Canada. There's one at Harts Point, 10 Mile, South Lisbon Valley, and Dolores Anticline, which these are all very promising to find uranium. And then Mont Laurier and Mosey Lake in Canada. They look very promising. It's 100% they own themselves. They're not owned by anybody else. And Section 232 via an executive order, a form declaration for U.S. resource independence with national security. Trump has put out a national security alert. We are looking for copper, silver, gold, and now uranium. Thorium and, I got to get this, monzonite, a very beautiful brown mineral you can get on eBay. And it's radioactive. I might buy some just for fun. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but I ate a lot of seaweed, so I'm not worried about it. But the bottom line is this Atomic Minerals, the link will be below. It's atomicminerals.ca, which is kind of weird. I guess that's for Canada. I don't cruise on google.com. I cruise on google.ru, but I guess google.ca is good. It looks very promising. Anyway, but I'm not a financial advisor, but it looks very promising. I think the stock's selling at 7.5 cents, and when they spike, they're going to spike. Anyway, on to the news. There was a vote. 223 Democrats voted not to use voter ID, but if you go to the Democratic National Convention, you have to show ID, photo ID to get in, but not if you vote in America. So now they're eliminating the voting machines. Cuba's been contained. They're the brains behind Venezuela, which was the money that supported the changing of American elections with Chinese advisors in Venezuela to swing us way to the left to destroy America. It's called vengeance for when they were occupied back in the late 1800s and 1900s. China has the long term. They are going after vengeance, the destruction of America. Why? It's vengeance. Hate at its finest. China is filled with hate. The people who come from China run from that, but a lot of them are sent here from Taiwan, which is still part of China, and from China. And they're sent here to create hate and dissension. We'll go over that in a minute. So anyway, when they took that vote, there were 0 congressmen present. You can go look at that yourself on Zero Hedge. They're talking about it. They're voting for it. The chairs hadn't even been sat in. There were no voting machines there. It was done in an empty hall in a studio. It's all fake. Mike Johnson wasn't even there. He's supposed to evict ILMAR OMAR. He's supposed to evict Ted Cruz for being a Canadian citizen. WTF, man. Anyway, Pam Bondi went before Congress, and I cannot believe how evil the demons are, the Democrats. So she sparred with Congressman Nadler. Congressman Nadler said, "What does the Dow Jones have to do with anything?" She says, "Are you crazy? Are you nuts?" She said, "Are you nuts? The Dow Jones has to do with everything. The S&P's at 7,000. The Dow Jones is at 50,000. What do you think Americans retire on? They don't retire on a sucking off the government like you as an actor for this fake Congress." She didn't say that, but I'm sure that's what she was thinking. She's more reserved than that. She's an attorney, loyal to the British Authorized Registry, which is run by a knight in England, which is loyal to the King of England. So Pam Bondi, loyal to the King of England, said, "Are you nuts? The Dow has everything to do with everything. It's how our retirements are funded." She called Nadler basically an absolute blithering idiot. Condescending piece of garbage, Nadler. Anyway, he's a double. The original one died. But anything, Ted Louis from Taiwan, a disloyal, destructive congressman, demon-possessed, put me in a room with him. I'll pound him to a pulp and I'll have to admit it. In the name of Yeshua, I'll pound him up one side and down the other, and he'd have to admit what he's here for. He's from Taiwan. He's here to destroy America. And he showed a video of Trump with Epstein. Of course, Trump was a Democrat. He powwowed with the Democrats. And then he bought Mar-a-Lago and he evicted a bunch of people like Epstein because they were perverted freaks. So yes, Trump powwowed with the Democrats. And he found out they were all a bunch of perverted nutcases, and then he became a Republican. And I'm telling you, these Democrats are shaking in their boots because they've done exactly what we suggested. You take Trump out of the Epstein files, you take all the good people you want to have around you out of the Epstein files, and you expose the Democrats for being the perverts they are. Then Pam Bondi, after Mr. Liu, not Congressman, it says Mr. Congress was dissolved. That's why it doesn't say Congressman Louis, it says Mr. Louis. Then there's Ms. JP, a Democrat, flat out lied. She can't speak English, but she flat out lied. There was no response from Pam Bondi. She just went, huh? And then Mr. Jones, the most condescending prick I have ever heard in my life, a guy who I wouldn't mind walking up and punching in the nose. He had the most condescending question to Pam Bondi. He said, and I couldn't believe his tone of voice. I'd have told him, I will see you right now in the back of this studio. Now, you little wimpy coward, just like the Minnesota governor who calls on the assassination of Trump, claims to be a big guy. Oh, I'll take him on. Little wimpy piece of human garbage. Claims that he's going to start a civil war, but he's not under arrest. I don't know what's wrong with Trump, but he's not arresting anyone. But then there was a very good question brought up by a Republican congressman. And he asked the question, why with 5 million pages of emails explaining the torture and the murder and the eating of humans by these 10,000 pedophiles in politics. Why is no one under arrest? To which Pam Bondi couldn't answer. Remember, the Department of Justice is in competition with the U.S. corporation. Dun & Bradstreet, baby. They rate them. So then Republican Lauren Boebert, who was a Democrat and in 2008 saw the light and said, I'm getting away from you demon-possessed nutcases, became a Republican. Why is it all the Republicans are cute and all the Democrats are ugly as sin? I mean, you look at them. Look at Maxine Waters. Look at these Democrats. They're ugly. Just twisted faces. The demons are coming out in them. That's what happens when you're demon-possessed. The demons start expressing themselves in your faces. So anyway, this one, Republican Lauren Boebert's kind of cute. She says it's far worse than you could imagine. She went through 3 million pages, and what she saw was cannibalism, human beef jerky. It's human jerky. Eating of humans after they torture them and murder them. The casting of bones. The underground base underneath Epstein Island. There's 6 Epstein Islands I'm aware of. Now there's one in Sumatra, a tidal wave wiped out. Killed thousands of children who were sex slaves. There's one in Cabo Fabrosa, Cuba. I know. Somebody tried to make a country out of that. I looked at it, and there was a CIA nudist colony. It's where it was on the aerial photo. Had a name and everything. I killed that country real fast. And then torturing, murdering, and eating of children. There's a restaurant called Cannibal. It talked about human jerky. Children 5 years old to 17 years old. And Republican Lauren Boebert asked the question, why are there no arrests? There's no answer. The Department of Justice is silent. This isn't going away. And again, Trump was a Democrat, and then he found out how perverted these freaks were, became a Republican, and evicted a lot of these Democrats out of, evicted them out of Mar-a-Lago. Told them to get out and never return, you pervert. So, is Trump involved? Yeah, he kicked the perverts out of Mar-a-Lago. That's what he did. Anyway, the FBI, of course, stated there will be on video. By the way, this is all on video on Zero Hedge. And finally, well, not finally, the FBI stated there will be no arrests for welfare fraud. So the Democrats have gotten away with stealing $1 trillion a year to fund their terrorist organizations, like Project Pink and Crowdsource, which still have websites. Google is still hosting them. Why has nobody marched into Google and arrested these people? That's exactly what Boebert asked. Why are there no arrests? And finally, ILMAR Omar, an illegal alien, again, who married a brother, and if she was in Somalia, she would have been killed for that. Now she claims to be a congresswoman. If she was in Somalia, she would have been killed for that. Claims to own a winery collecting federal dollars. If she was the winery is a vacant lot, she would have been killed in Somalia for that, for lying, cheating, and fraud. When she was asked about welfare fraud and patting her pocket with $30 million from the welfare fraud in Minnesota, because she's from Minnesota. Of course, that's where they send all the black Muslims. That's where they grow all the canola oil that kills you. Minnesota. Anyway, she stated, she diverted, she started posting. And this is what she posted. Why? No one has arrested her. Again, if I could take her into a room and pound her, I would say in the name of Yeshua, and I would approach her and she would cower because she's completely demon-possessed. That's why she looks so weird. Wears a headscarf. She's demon-possessed. The headscarves and the masks were designed by the Arabs long before the Muslim religion to control the women and make them slaves. And then where Allah, the god of war, Mars, came along, they all started to follow Allah, one god instead of 35 gods. But anyway, The history of the Arab republics is fascinating. The real history, not what they tell you in high school. But at least she said that President Trump is the chief pedophile. She's the chief of the pedophile protection army. He's the chief of the pedophile protection army. And at least in Somalia, they execute pedophiles. So now ILMAR OMAR is openly posting for the assassination of President Trump. And there have been no arrests. None. The FBI is sitting on their thumbs waiting for arrest orders. Rather than arresting ILMAR OMAR and the governor of Minnesota, ICE and Homeland Security is in Italy. What the heck do we have ICE in Italy for when we're not arresting an illegal alien who married a brother supposedly in Congress, but her name tag is Mrs. Omar? Like Mr. Liu, like Mr. Nadler. It still doesn't say congressman. And when they pan Congress, when they're speaking, there's nobody there. And ILMAR OMAR and the Minnesota governor and the California governor can openly call on the assassination of Trump, and they're not arrested. Why is the FBI still funded? And why do we have a guy who looks like this? This was not the original Kash Patel. Why do we have a double looking like this with his eyes like that, indicating you're absolutely crazy? Why do we have a crazy man running the SS called the FBI? Comey's daddy ran the SS and orchestrated the Holocaust. He was the head of the FBI. He killed 6 million people, including over 1 million Jews. And he ran the FBI. Why did a 3-star general, lieutenant general from Nazi Germany serving directly under Hitler, run NATO? Why did Wernher von Braun, the man who developed the V-1 missiles to kill people in London, and V-2 missile, take over Boeing and then NASA? A Nazi. One day he's hanging out with the Nazis, next day he's hanging out with the Americans with a broken arm. Boeing's so proud of that. Why did Boeing build the Junker 88 bomber for Nazi Germany? Why did Boeing provide fighters for Finland to kill the Russians in World War II? All these questions go unanswered. Why do we have water-powered P-51 aircraft in 1941, but now we're driving gasoline cars that get 18 miles to the gallon like R2 cars? All these questions remain unanswered. And why is ILMAR OMAR not in jail for calling on the open assassination of Donald Trump? I leave it to you to decide. But again, this video will be censored. And so getting a hold of it will be very tough. We'll be on 12 different channels. God bless. Thank you very much. We'll see you bright and early. If they don't throw me off the air for telling the truth. Massive censorship across America. Yeah, we don't have a First Amendment. God bless. The only way I can get away with telling the truth is I still have an embassy for another country in Kiev. God bless. Thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.